okay? The first thing you want to do, like I mentioned earlier, is just flex it along the spine right there. Check to see how stiff it is. And again, we said, what kind of metal is this? It's spring steel, right? It wants to spring back to true. So when you're at a flea market, maybe conversing with someone on eBay, or you're at a woodworking show, you got a saw that catches your eye like this beautiful old 1850s number 7 Diston. This thing was made in the late 1840s. This is one of Henry Diston's first generation saws right here. It's even got the split nuts, right?
Yeah, that was 25 bucks.
That's really cool, man. You got a score. So this saw catches your eye at a flea market or wherever you found it, right? The very first thing you want to do is with one hand, just hold it by the handle and peer down the tooth line. Maybe get it against maybe a bright surface like this floor. You want to let it hang plumb. What you don't want to do is hold it with two hands, because then you won't get a true reading. You want to see what's going on with that tooth line by seeing how straight it is. You also want to be able to, invariably you're going to encounter bows and kinks. You want to remember where you see those. Like with this one, I see that there is a kink right here. This is the concave side of the kink, and that's the convex side of the kink. So I want everybody to get a chance to do that. Just kind of circle around the floor and look at your saw, hold it, let it find plumb, and memorize the sight picture. Kink that I pointed out with that saw earlier, right?
Yeah, but it's a real trick to know how far down it is.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I'm going to show you a technique how to do that.
Yeah, and it goes wing,
Richard, what do we have here?
wing.
Let's see what you got. Oh, this is really straight.
Yeah.
You've got just very little wrong with that. Yeah. But the key thing is to memorize this sight picture and know what we're up against. This too is about 95% straight. Now I'm going to show you the next thing. Okay? Give yourself some space, because you don't want to slap anybody in the face with your tooth line. After you've assessed, and you're going to hear this word an awful lot, assessment. Like I said earlier, the better part of saw sharpening is your visual, okay? And the second half of that equation is constant state of assessment. Before you move on to the next step, think about what it is you're doing and what does that mean, okay? So with this one, I see that we got a slight kink right here, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold the saw up and I'm gonna pull the toe end down like this, and I'm gonna let it pop, and then I'm gonna assess it again. I'm not gonna hold it, resist that urge holding it with two hands. Just let it hang plumb and see if anything changed from that original sight picture. I want everybody to do that now, okay? You can flex it a little bit more than that. You're not gonna hurt it. This is spring steel and it's gonna spring back to true. Or not.
Nah.
All right. Did anything change, Jim? All right, anybody else, did anything change on your sight picture? Okay. Richard, did anything change? Now what I want you to do is, you've just finished assessing that initial pop. Keep it in this, now switch hands and pull it to the opposite side. Let it pop. And see, again, whether or not anything has changed in your assessment. Any change? No.
Yeah, I went farther.
Did it exacerbate a little bit?
Yeah.
Let me check that out.
Exacerbate.
I know that's a big word. You know,
It's for so.
you worked with the Marines for a
Yeah.
while. Okay. Well, I'm
I
sorry.
like-
Oh,
I like that there's a Navy hat and an Army hat going on
We've
here.
been
Did that on
teasing each
purpose.
other already.
yeah.
So now, just to be safe, you can also just keep it down when you pop it. It exacerbated just a little bit, but not enough to count. This saw is salvageable. Now let's talk about what all this means, this whole drill, okay? You assessed how stiff it was to begin with. You assessed whether or not there's any hooks, crooks, and bows and kinks in your tooth line. You committed that sight picture to memory. Then you popped it to the left, reassessed to see if anything changed. You're also getting an additional affirmation as to how stiff your saw is. okay? And then you popped it in the other direction and assessed it to see if anything, again, changed in your sight picture. Well, now here's, and I can tell you all these saws are that we just looked at, and let's just rotate them, all right, from one person to another. And I want everybody as I talk to look at these saws and do the same thing as I talk you through this. You're getting a feel for the saw as to how stiff it is, and you're memorizing that sight picture. Here's what goes on. When you pull it to one side, and now you've introduced a bow, because in the direction of that pull, and then it's not necessarily the end of the world, but when you pull it to the other side and pop it and look at it, now if that bow wants to swing the opposite way, that's a saw that's not worth working on.
It won't return to true.
It won't return to true. It just goes to the last direction of flex. That saw over time has been kinked and abused so much, maybe it's gotten too rusty and it's compromised the crystalline structure of the grain at the molecular level. Who knows? It can probably be hammersmithed straight, but it probably won't stick. So here's the key takeaway. When it comes to a saw worth saving, it's all about the metal. Fasteners can be replaced, wood can be repaired, but it's that ability of that hardened and tempered spring steel to spring back to true is what you're after. And that's how you determine whether or not it's worth your time and energy to work on. All right, everybody clear on that? Yep. Let's talk about rust a little bit. You'll see that this saw is dark. It's got rust stains on it, but there's no active rust. It's been nicely cleaned. Even if it has a few pits, that's no big deal. But what you're looking for in assessing a saw is whether or not you got deep pits along the tooth line or maybe a patch of deep pits just above the tooth line. There are even saws out there that might have a slight tear in the metal. So stay away from those saws. They're not worth your time or your expense, okay? So that is essentially how you determine whether or not a saw is worth saving. Even if it's covered in rust, it's probably still a good saw. When you pick it up at the flea market, do your flex test, all right? And as long as everything's springing back to true, maybe wipe off a little bit of the rust, you know, the chances are it's worth saving, all right? And that's your key takeaway, all right? Let's talk about assessing a backsaw now. Backsaws typically have very thin plates. This one mikes out 0.25, very typical thickness of a plate back in the 19th century. All right, they were a little more robust, a little thicker than today's plates, which are typically at, this one's 0.2. We'll get into plate gauge and how that works later. Right now, let's talk about a backsaw. We'll begin with the anatomy, which same anatomy as a handsaw: heel, toe, tooth line, spine, the spine. However, this has a sawback on the backsaw. Because these plates are designed for furniture grade cuts, and they're thinner as a result, well, that's going to be pretty flimsy. You're trying to push it through wood, right? So you got to stiffen it. And so that's why you have a sawback. And you have two different flavors of sawbacks. If you pass that around, let's just look at these different saws. Look at the end. You'll see that in many cases they're pinched closed, but if you also look at that area right there, you'll see that the metal is folded over. And that's referred to as a folded sawback, traditional folded sawback. Look at it on the end, you can determine that. Now there are other saws. Here's a Lee Nielsen that has a slit milled along the underside of the sawback, which is basically a chunk of brass that's been formed. And you have the saw plate is fitted inside that precisely machined slit. I just refer to those as static backs or fixed backs, okay? Both folded sawbacks and static backs have their advantages and disadvantages, okay? We'll get into how to retension a saw in a bit. Who here thinks that this saw was deliberately formed like this? That there was less real estate on this end than on this end, right?
Yeah.
Actually, you see how it's kind of lifted up here? It was dropped, all right? This is a folded sawback, and the plate was jammed up further in there. With the exception of a few British saws, all right, all American saws are good rectangles, and you might have a little bit of the sawback or the plate jammed up into the sawback to create a little bit less real estate for a canted appearance. And this is so you don't overshoot the far side of the cut that you can't make when you're dovetailing. But for tenon saws, it's really not that necessary. But let me disabuse you of the notion that this saw was intentionally made with this severe of a cant. It's there because it was dropped and the plate was jammed up inside that folded sawback. That won't happen with a static back, all right? So in any event, when we are assessing these saws, don't let this throw you off. This can be fixed, and we're going to fix the cant on this plate back relationship. Here's how you assess a backsaw. You're going to hold it down, just like we did with the handsaw, and let's just pass around. I want everybody to do this. Pass these saws around and look straight down and see what's going on. Just hold it with one hand and let it find plumb, and look to see if there are any kinks, hooks, bows, whatever with these saws. All right. What are you finding with that one, Jim?
Goes that way.
Has a little bit of a kink to it, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of a bow.
Very steady bow.
Sweeps.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the next thing I want you to do, and I want everybody to pause and do the same with the saw that you're holding. The next thing you want to do, you've assessed it this way, all right? Now I want you to hold it up to the light and look at that tooth line against the light and see if anything has changed or looks a little bit different. Or maybe you get a different perspective on it and it illuminates a little bit more what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that's another way of assessing your backsaw.
Yeah.
All right, now think about this for a minute. This backsaw has a consistent plane. Imagine if that plane had a twist in it. What would happen when you cut with that saw and you're pushing it through the curve, and the plate's slightly twisted? It's going to jam, it's going to drag, it's going to bind, and it's not going to be a clean, elegant cut, is it? Because you got a twist along the plane. So how do you check for that? You're going to hold it. Now look how I'm holding it. I'm just barely pinching the spine. I want to stick my forefinger out and hold it just above the handle there. And again, I'm going to hold it up to the light, look at it from different perspectives, and I'm going to let my eyes focus on this edge of the plate. All right? And I'm going to look at that edge, and then I'm going to see how that translates to whether or not that edge is in parallel to the handle. If this edge is parallel to the handle, chances are I don't have a twist in the plate, right? But it'll become very apparent to you as you let your eyes focus on that edge. If it's leaning toward 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock, out of parallel to the handle, my God, I got a twist in that plate, all right? So I want everybody to look at it like that now. Again, you're going to hold it up, get your hands out of the way, all right? Just barely clench the back, put your forefinger out there, not your hand, just your forefinger. Balance it, let your eyes focus on the edge, and see whether or not that edge leans toward 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock based on whether or not it's parallel to the handle.
Well, then not only leans, it curves.
Curves. The plate curves?
Yeah.
Let me look at that.
Yeah.
You see how plate's telling you a story, isn't it? I see what you mean. Yeah, there is a curve.
Tell me throw it in the trash.
No, we're going to fix it.
I bought that in 1979.
We're going to fix it, amigo.
Okay.
And now there's another step toward assessing a backsaw. The sawback itself is not the same kind of steel or metal as the spring steel. It is a softer metal, okay? It could be brass, it could be low carbon steel, but the intention of your sawback is to be malleable enough to make a minor chiropractic adjustment, if you will, toward straightening out that saw plate. So your back can be slightly distorted. But how distorted can it be? You don't want a big ass dog leg in there, right? So let's see what's going on as we found that slight kink. Let's see if the back is contributing to the problem, because maybe it was dropped, stepped on, maybe somebody laid something down on that sawback and it bent. You see, we can fix the sawback. I'm going to teach you how to do that here in the class. It's called truing the sawback. But let's see whether or not we have a problem and assess where the problem is on that sawback. So now when you hold it up to the light, this time instead of focusing on this edge, I want your focus to be on the underside of the sawback, and just move to where you can see it and sight along. Let your eyesight traverse from toe to heel on both sides of that sawback, and if there's a deformity there, it's going to jump out at you. You might have a deformity there, but it's a perfectly straight and true saw plate. That's okay. But if your saw plate's out of whack, and if there's a deformity on your back, it's the back that's the culprit, because that back clenches the spine of your plate and it translates into the straightness of your tooth line. What you do to the back translates into the tooth line, okay? So that's what you're looking for, and that's how you assess a sawback.
So what's your definition of one that's not worth the time?
That's a good question. If it's not worth the time, if you have a huge dog leg in that back, common sense is going to tell you, yeah, that thing's seen better days. We can attempt to straighten it out, but you're probably going to be, throwing good money after bad. But on that note, let's see how much of a problem we truly have by retensioning the sawback. That sawback is movable. You'll see that there's an S-roll in that plate right now. Let's focus on the tooth line. Do you see that? All right. Go along. Just look at the S-roll in your plate. Thanks. You may be at a flea market and come across this saw and it's beautiful, but oh my God, the plate's bowed. It's kinked.
Oh my gosh.
It's really not.
Yeah.
Backsaws withstand the test of time far longer than handsaws, because that back keeps them from kinking. All right. Now what has happened is somebody tried to use the saw to cut a curve. Inelegant saw technique, shall we say. Or maybe it was grogged. Or maybe you loaned it out to a friend. You get it back. Oh my God, you kinked my plate. Or you found the saw at a flea market that you really like, but oh my God, it's got a big kink in the plate. Or maybe it's an eBay saw and no one's buying it because it's got a big ass kink in the plate. The plate's not kinked, it's simply out of compression. It's simply out of tension. I'm going to show you how to fix that. All right? You take that saw to a jointed flat surface like a bench top. All right? You're going to put about 5 psi of pressure on it with the heel of your hand. Jim, come over here and lift up my hand and saws, and you'll see how hard I'm holding it down.
Okay.
I'm not killing it, but it's a positive engagement, all right? And you're going to put the thumb and forefinger of your hand along the underside of the sawback here to where you can feel that underside and the plate at the same time. And you're going to get a mallet, you're going to tap it just enough to feel that plate shift a little bit. You're getting that biofeedback by holding it like this with your thumb and forefinger. Then you're going to flip it around and hit the other end until you feel it shift, and now look at it. What we've done is we've teeter-tottered the sawback along the axis of the spine. Remember my earlier comment, what you do at the spine translates into the tooth line. And when you equalize the clamping tension along the spine, now it straightens out your tooth line.
Magic.
Mm-hmm. It's just dumb stuff that it was figured out well over 200 plus years ago. This is ancient technology. Saw design's not been improved upon, really, for a long time. So anyway, that's your other step of determining whether or not a backsaw is worth staving. Looks beautiful, has a big kink. Excuse me for a moment. You whack it, look at it, it's straight. I'll take it for the princely sum of $5. And that's how I came into one of my favorite 18-inch Henry Diston split nut tenon saws that I patterned the Bad Axe 18-inch saw. After I cleaned the rust off, got rid of the paint, retensioned it, it was good as new as it was made back in 1883. All right, there it is.